Welcome. Today I thought I would talk about a subject which is very much of concern to music teachers at the moment, which is how to give lessons remotely online. It's a thing that we've all been forced to get to grips with recently, and so I thought I'd show you some of my experiences and some of the things I've learned or think that I've learned, or some of the opinions that I have formulated having had the experience of giving lessons online and also receiving them. And it's a big and a complicated subject, and there are many different ways of tackling it. So there's various pieces of software that one can use to give lessons online. You can use Zoom, which is perhaps the most popular one. There is also Apple's FaceTime, and of course there is also Skype. In my experience, none of these are really all that perfect for giving music lessons. None of them have really been calculated for the purpose, and so really there's a design opportunity there for software engineers to come up with something that really is. But I've found the best results from Zoom, and so I'll say something about the settings in Zoom and also the hardware that I found effective to give online piano lessons. So when people think about giving lessons of piano or other musical instruments online, I think the first thing you think about is, can I do it with a phone, with a smartphone? And the answer is, well, you can, but it's quite difficult. So you immediately face the problem with a smartphone that you've got a small image there. So the issues that you need to deal with in giving lessons is that you need to be able to see and to hear both ways. Obviously, the pupil needs to hear and see the teacher clearly and what the teacher is doing, and the teacher needs to see and hear clearly what the pupil is doing. And so you're dependent also on the equipment setup that your pupil has got, and you're usually making the best of a relatively bad job there, but the least you can do is make the equipment at your end optimal. So you try and use a phone, but you find that to put it in a position where you can show what you're doing with the keyboard, you have to put it a long way away so you can see, and then you can't really see what fingers I'm using. You can only see a general view of the keyboard. If it was over the keyboard, then that would be awkward to arrange. So you can't have a phone staying really in the right place. It would need to be in a variety of positions at once. And if it's a long way away like that end of the keyboard, then yeah, the pupil is going to be able to see a certain amount of what you're doing with your fingers, but you'll have difficulty seeing the pupil, what the pupil is doing. Their image will be very small, and that's the basic problem you face with a small gadget like a phone. To get the wide view that the pupil needs, you have to put it a long way away from you. And then when it's a long way away from you, it's difficult for you to deal with. It's difficult for you to control it and to see what you need to see on it. So the next possibility you might consider is a tablet device. So obviously this is going to be quite a bit better because it's a much bigger screen, so you can put it further away from you, and you can probably devise ways of propping it up or putting it on a stand so that you can get a good view of the keyboard, and you could actually get a good image of the pupil as well. And the microphones in these gadgets and the speakers are really remarkably good. I've tried this and I didn't persist with it very long, because basically you realise is what you have to do is you have to separate your screen from the camera. You need cameras, at least one camera that gives an overall view of the keyboard. You also need a camera really that shows your hands, ideally the ones that shows your feet as well, but maybe that's not strictly necessary. And just to be a bit friendly, you need to see the face. So you're dealing with quite a complicated range of requirements you need. And there's also sound, of course. The sound that you get from laptops is sometimes quite good, but you'll always get better sound with an external microphone. So let's think about using a laptop. So here I have got a MacBook Air, and this is quite a handy size of gadget because you can put this on a piano. Let's put some cloths on the piano to protect the finish of the piano. You can have it here, and then I can clearly see what my camera is showing, and there's enough desktop space there that I could get a clear view of what the pupil's camera is showing. And with this method you can connect in different cameras via USB. There are other methods as well, but well, they'll come to the computer via USB, but if you have a camera with an HDMI output, then you can get a converter to convert from the HDMI to the USB. And so then you have the possibility of having cameras in different places. So what I have here is one camera that I'm speaking to over here, but I've also got an overhead camera, which is up here, and that's set up to show the overall view of the keyboard. Here's the overhead camera. This is a Logitech C903E, and I've extended the lead to it using a USB 2 extension cable, which is essential for this purpose. So it's on a stalk which is screwed to the wall. Another possibility would have been to put it on a tripod, but given the limited space round the piano, I didn't feel like doing that. So this extendable stalk was procured from Amazon, and it can go in and out of the wall, and also the camera can be pivoted in one direction, and it can also be rotated, so that gives 3 degrees of movement, which are enough to point it in exactly the right direction. These webcams give reasonable results, but not brilliant results on objects that are not human faces. Typically the contrast tends to be too great, I find. USB 2 cables can be extended to about 5 meters without any problems, but USB 3 are more problematic and probably only extendable to 3 meters. And there's the Logitech Brio camera next to the bust of Sir Arthur Sullivan, and that is the camera that I use to get an overall view of myself and also the piano. You can see that I'm using that camera at the long side of the piano, and the reason for that choice is because I've got the window in that direction, and so the natural illumination is going to come from there. But even if it doesn't come from there, I've put some big lights up in that direction, and there's the big lights, so they're shining from the direction where the window would be anyway. So removing the cameras from the viewing gadget, from the gadget that's running the session, in other words it would be in this case the MacBook, that allows a lot more flexibility of what you can do, what you can show to the pupil. And within Zoom it's actually possible to switch between different cameras. There's a keyboard shortcut, or you can do it through the menu at the lower left hand edge of the screen next to the camera symbol, though I found it more convenient to set up some briefer keyboard shortcuts than the one they provided. I actually managed to set it up so that I press the Command and the E button, and those two together will cycle through from between the laptop's own camera, between the camera that's overhead and the camera that's to the side. So several cameras is very helpful, I have to say that the webcams don't work very well for this purpose because they're really designed to look at faces, and when they look at objects that are not faces, such as a keyboard, they don't really succeed in adjusting the exposure or the focus all that accurately. You can tweak these things manually. Nearly all the decent webcams are made by Logitech, and they provide a piece of software called Logitech Capture, which allows you to tweak some of the settings, such as the brightness and the field of view of these cameras. But they never give fantastic results on objects that are not human faces, because that's what they're designed to deal with. And I find if you point a webcam at a big black shiny piano, it just greatly overexposes the scene. As you can see, my background here is exposed to look extremely bright, although it's just normal internal lighting really, and the piano looks very dark. When there's that big dark object in the field of view, it seems to overexpose everything. So I've actually turned the brightness and contrast manually down, and you can do that in the Logitech Capture software. But one thing to be aware of is that those settings don't persist between reboots of the computer, so you have to keep setting that up again and again. So I would say the webcams, even the most expensive webcams that are easily available, are not all that satisfactory for this purpose. And I know that some people who've set up more expensive and complicated rigs for giving online piano lessons are using video cameras, and then they're feeding into a device, a converter, a video capture card converter, which it then gives you the USB input to the camera. And there's also things called video mixers, which do the same kind of switching job that I was mentioning, that I was doing a switching job in Zoom by using a key combination to switch from one camera to another easily. You can get boxes which are video mixers, where you've got physical switches that you can switch between different HDMI sources. I won't deal with that, I haven't got one of those. But the box creates a single feed that goes to the USB port of the computer, and that whole box and multi-camera setup is then seen by the computer as one thing, and the switching is done externally. But I haven't gone down that route, so my setup is a bit more basic than that. And you can go to any lengths with this kind of thing. So I'm just giving you what some of my experiences are of the do's and don'ts. Then we come to the subject of sound. So the sound from a computer like the MacBook is its internal microphone is not bad, but you get better results, much better results, using an external microphone. And there you've got a choice between USB microphones and more professional recording microphones, which are known as XLR microphones usually, because they have the 3-pin plug, and those don't go directly into a computer. Those need to go through an audio interface. So this is the microphone that I'm recording at the moment. This is the Rode NT1 USB, or USB NT1. The most popular microphone that people seem to be using for this kind of purpose is the Blue Yeti, but in fact when I looked during the first lockdown, I couldn't get one of those, so I ended up getting the Rode, which is extremely good. It's around £100, and it's very simple to use. I've tried using it with a variety of Macs and PCs, and it really is just plug and play. You just plug it in, and then it shows up in Zoom. Under the audio settings in Zoom, you can choose it in preference to the internal microphone, and away you go. It's very simple, and it's worked with all the computers that I've tried. And you can also use it with headphones, and you can monitor the sound directly if you want to. Another thing you find is that it's very hard to optimize the microphone to both reproduce the piano sound and to reproduce the sound of your voice. So it's highly desirable to have more than one microphone. Then you can have one near your face, and you can have one that's more optimally placed for the piano. The Rode just placed on the top of the piano like this will give quite a good result. But it's bass heavy. It will pick up a lot of bass directly through the cabinet of the piano. So I tried another USB microphone, and this is one that I bought from Thomann in Germany, and it comes in a lovely case, and it's only half the price of the Rode, and I couldn't detect very much difference in the sound quality. And this is one of their T-bone microphones. This is called the SC420 USB. It's quite a chunky thing, and it comes with lots of accessories and the muffly thing and stand to put it on. It's actually, considering it was only half the price of the Rode, it's actually a great deal of hardware for the money, and you even get a nice case with it, and it gives pretty good results. And so for many of my lessons, I've been using this setup with the Rode setup to get my voice, and the USB mic the other USB mic, the one from Thomann, set up to get the piano sound. One thing you can actually do within the Mac operating system, one of its strengths, is that you can mix together different USB microphone sources. If you find the audio MIDI setup app, which is separate from the sound settings, you'll find a way to do that. There is a way to create what it calls an aggregate audio device, and you can combine two USB microphones in a variable balance, in a balance tailored as you want it to be within the software of within the basic system software of the Mac, without having an external audio mixer. An external audio mixer is, of course, another possibility. Then you wouldn't be dealing with USB microphones. Then you would be dealing with more serious microphones. I've got a pair of more serious microphones here. This is a pair of Rode M5 mics, a stereo pair mounted on a tripod, and that's what I might use for more serious recording purposes, but it's not really necessary for lessons, which are perfectly satisfactory in mono. But if you wanted to do it in stereo, you would need a stereo pair of microphones, and you would need one of these audio interfaces or something similar to this. This is the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, and this is a box where the microphones with the 3-pin connection, which gives them the 48 volt so-called phantom power, the microphones plug in left and right, there and there, and then there's a USB connection on the back, and that goes to the PC, and after you've installed the drivers, then this box will be responsible for collecting the sound. It can then be used on Zoom or recorded on hard disk. But that's a more expensive option. But if you want more flexibility of using larger number of microphones, then you would think about that option, and also the possibility of getting an audio mixer as well. But that's getting into a lot more hardware than I suspect most instrument teachers would wish to deal with, because obviously you can only closely control your side of the bargain. You can't really very closely control what the pupil is doing, and you can give them a bit of advice. But you usually find that if people are having difficulty getting a sound that you can hear well, that is, in my experience, 90% of the time that is because the microphone in their device, whatever their device is, a phone or a laptop, it isn't adequate, and they would get a much better result with a USB microphone like the Rode here. It's 95% of the time I find it's not a software problem, it's not a configurations problem, it's just the microphone that is built into some devices just isn't much good, particularly for music. So another consideration is that Zoom, in the way it's designed for conferencing and meetings, is designed to flavour the human voice and to exclude extraneous noise. And that extraneous noise would include things like a beeping phone, and it would also include a musical instrument. So Zoom, as it's designed, is designed to suppress music. So there are settings in Zoom that you have to address to get a good result. Now, first of all, you don't want the adjustment, the automatic volume adjustment, because in playing the piano forte, loud, soft, that's going to even out your louds and softs. So you need to turn that automatic adjustment off. And therefore, in turning the automatic adjustment off, you need to set your levels. You need to set the input level to Zoom either on your microphone interface or through the Zoom interface itself, so that when you play something loud on the piano, you're getting most of the range of the audio levels filled up, but it's not overflowing, so it's not distorting, but and it's loud enough for the quiet passages. So you have to play with that a bit. Then there's this other feature called Turn on Original Sound in Zoom, which is highly confusing, but what it means is that you are turning off Zoom's internal processing that removes what it regards as noise, which is probably actually your playing. And so that's what you want to do. You want to remove that internal processing. You want to get the original sound. So you have to, in the audio advanced options, enable original sound, and then you get a green flag at the top left of the Zoom screen, which either says turn original sound on or turn original sound off. And this is most confusing. It would be better if it was a rocker switch that showed you both states at the same time. It doesn't. So if you see turn original sound on, that means it's off. So you need to turn it on. And if you see turn original sound off, that means it's on. So that's what you want. But you'll find that it very easily reverts to having the no original sound, having the processing on it, having the noise processing on it. So and when you change view or you go into a breakout room or something like that, it tends to reverse back. So it's quite annoying. You have to keep monitoring that and making sure that it hasn't turned the original sound off. There's also a feature in Zoom now in the latest versions, which is high fidelity music mode. And so I recommend turning this on. There are these various settings in Zoom that certainly as the teacher you can try and optimize to get your sound of your playing as clear as possible to the pupil, and you can try and get the pupil to make the right settings at the other end as well. Another point of equipment recommendation I have for you is that though you can obviously conduct your lessons using a Wi-Fi connection, it's always more reliable to do any kind of internet streaming, which means sending a stream of audio and video. It's always much more reliable to use a wired connection. So you can get a thing which gives a wired connection. So the MacBook Air doesn't have a wired connection, it doesn't have an Ethernet port, but you can get a thing which is a USB dongle from Lindy, which connects to the Ethernet cable. And then gives you the USB connection. This may be a difficult thing to arrange in many studios. You may not want to have a lot of Ethernet wire around your studio. It does greatly improve the reliability of the transmission to have a wired connection rather than a Wi-Fi connection, unless your Wi-Fi connection is unusually good. Well, even a typical Wi-Fi connection will work 95% of the time, but you'll get better results with a wired connection invariably. So here is the view with the overhead camera, the Logitech C903E, and it's possible to alter the view using, you can make adjustments to the brightness and contrast, and it's possible to zoom in and out. And choose the standard or widescreen mode. Great. Other people I know are getting good results using video cameras or camcorders, bridge cameras, DSLRs, which give HDMI output, and connecting that to the capture card, which then gives the input in USB form, or some of the latest DSLRs from Canon don't even need the capture card. So that's an alternative way of doing it. More expensive equipment involved, most probably, but it will probably give you a higher resolution and better contrast, better adjustments, and adjustments that stick through reboots of the computer, and more options if you've got real optical zoom possibilities. And GoPro type cameras work quite well for this kind of purpose as well, I believe. Here's the audio MIDI setup window. You can find audio MIDI setup within the utilities folder, which is within the applications folder. And this shows what I was talking about with the aggregate device, how the aggregate device can be set up, can be defined as being a combination of different microphones, and one of them is connected here at the time and one of them is not. And you can actually mix these microphones. You don't do the mixing in this screen, you do it within the preferences, the system preferences, the sound preferences, and here when it shows, you look at the input, you see that you can adjust the volume level of the different microphones, reduce it, increase it, and choosing that for the different microphones that make up your aggregate device allow you to mix the sound to some extent within the system software without having a hardware mixing desk, and then that mix goes in to Zoom as the aggregate device. Here I can show you the settings in the very latest version of Zoom for Mac. That is January the 3rd, 2021. And on the top left here, here's the thing I talked about, turn on original sound. So we want to click on that. So it now says turn off original sound. So that means that original sound, which is the thing that we want, is currently on. So that's quite confusing. To get it on, you have to have the label saying turn it off. Then let's look at the audio settings. You know probably already how to mute and unmute the microphone. Let's look at the settings to the right hand side of that. It gives you a choice of microphones that you can adopt, and you see I've got checked there the aggregate device, which is the combination microphone, the combination of several mics that I've set up in Apple's audio MIDI audio capture software, and that is then feeding to Zoom as one single option, the aggregate device. In select a speaker, you want the built-in output, or the same as system would have the same results. You don't want to choose one of the microphones as a speaker. This is a slightly confusing thing that can happen, that the microphones can turn up in the speaker list, and I've made that mistake. Don't choose one of the microphones as the speaker, that won't work. Then there's the audio settings. Let's have a look at those. So here you see, importantly, we've got automatically adjust microphone volume turned off. So we're getting the full range of dynamics of the sound, the pianos and the fortes, and the input level is set It's actually not set here, it's actually set in the Apple Sound menu. And we want the input level set so that a loud chord played doesn't overload the system. And there we are, we don't get distortion with that, or shouldn't do. So looking further down, music and professional audio. So this shows you that the developers of Zoom now, in the latest versions, they have actually twigged that people are using Zoom for music and audio purposes. And what we want to have checked here is we want to have checked the show in meeting option to enable original sound. So we've got that green flag at the top left hand of the screen. We want high fidelity music mode to be checked. Then you get the further options enabled when that is on for the high fidelity music mode, which you have on. Echo cancellation, that seems to be a good thing to have on. And the stereo audio, well, that will greatly increase all attendees' CPU usage, it says. So not really necessary, but I've got that on here anyway. So that's those settings, the advanced sound settings, and let's look at the video options. And here to the right of the video camera symbol you have the various video cameras. You can switch between them. There's the overhead camera, and there's the straight on camera, the camera in the MacBook itself, but I can also cycle between these because I've set up a shortcut. So using the keyboard I can just cycle between those as well, which is useful for giving lessons. Now here's a useful thing I can show you. Here is an iPad and I've got some sheet music displayed on it. And a very useful feature of Zoom on the Mac, or indeed I believe on the PC, is that it will share the screen of an iPad directly. So if we go into the share screen options, you see you get the option to share the iPhone or the iPad either via AirPlay, which is the wireless connection, or via the cable, which is the wired connection. I've got the cable here, so I'll use the via cable option, and then I choose share. And then what we should get in a green surround will be a shared screen of the iPad, and there it is, and that's showing what the iPad is showing, which is actually some sheet music. This is the lesson. This is a scan of the lesson book, and I'm displaying the PDF that the scan produced in an app. The app is the IMSLP app. There are various apps that you can use. Fourscore is another well-known one, but this is the IMSLP app. And here's a very useful thing. I can use an Apple Pencil, which I have here, to show to the pupil. I can show the pupil the music through this app directly, and then I can annotate it. For example, I could highlight, let's get the highlighter, I could highlight notes to show the pupil exactly what I'm talking about, or I could add in fingerings by hand using the Apple Pencil, and the student will see those appearing in real time on their screen if I've shared the music in this manner. Obviously the pupil will not get those markings in their copy, but they will see what markings I'm putting in my copy, and I can show them exactly what features of the printed music I'm discussing at the time. So this is a really useful feature. You can try and show your pupils the music by just holding the paper page up to the camera, but that's usually a failure. This method is far better, utilizing the iPad and the integration into Zoom using the screen sharing function. It may seem here that I'm advertising Apple products rather a lot, but it does seem to be the case that they work well together, and they work well when they're networked together. And in my experience, the best results are obtained when both the student and the teacher are on Apple systems at both ends of the line. And obviously you just work with what you've got anyway. But a big strength of the Apple ecosystem is that the products do integrate well together, and the iPad integrates well with Zoom through this screen sharing function like this. So overall, I would say Zoom piano lessons can be productive, and they're obviously not as good as having a real piano lesson, or any other instrumental lesson, but they're much better than not having a lesson at all. And you can, with a moderately complicated setup, you can reproduce nearly all the interactions that you can in a real lesson. It's still kind of annoying that you can't actually pick the pupil's hand up and put it on the right keys and show him exactly how to use his fingers. So you have to develop alternative strategies. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for getting through it as far as this. I hope you found my experiences and opinions of how optimally to do online piano lessons useful. I'd be very interested to hear your experiences if you're a teacher, and your opinions and recommendations of equipment. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe and please like the video, then I will know to make more informational videos of this character. See you again sometime. Bye bye.